a pleasure to welcome all guests to this youth dialogue on silencing the guns in Africa by the year 2020 through investing in youth and peace education. It's a webinar or a youth dialogue organized by the African Union, Youth for Peace section, and UNESCO ICBA, which is a Category 1 institute under the UNESCO. And my name is SALAAM INITIATIve from UNESCO ICBA. And as you know, hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yes,
okay,
we can hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
so some interruptions. Okay, so as you know, peace is UNESCO's priority. Therefore, UNESCO ICBA works to contribute both based on its role on or based on its mandate on education for the Agenda 2063, which emphasizes on nurturing the culture of peace and tolerance in African children and youth through peace education. So UNESCO ICBA believes that peace education will not be sustainable until the participation and the ownership of youth is secured. So it's with this assumption that we are having this continuous dialogues and involving the African youth from almost all of the African countries. And this dialogue is under the Silencing the Gun in Africa by the year 2020 through the involvement of youth and education. And this is the second dialogue with a focus on the young people as an agent of change by championing education for peace and prevention of violence. And it will be a 2 hours dialogue. And the overall objectives of this dialogue is to promote the role of young people as positive agents of change and to galvanize the energy of the youth participants in championing peace education in higher education and non-formal education, as well as to lead the youth participants in identifying specific youth-led initiatives that promote a culture of peace, respect, mutual understanding, and dialogue for youth through peace education. So the overall objective is all these dialogues will lead us to create a concrete plan and also materials that can be used to aware the youth on the area of peace and preventing violence in African continent. And thank you for being part of this good cause, and thank you for accepting our invitation for this dialogue. And I may invite Dr. Rooks from a Youth and Peace section for his words, for some words from him, and then we will continue on the agenda. Dr. Rooks, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to work with UNESCO ICBA, and I think the Youth for Peace Africa program has already fostered a very healthy relationship, which we believe will ultimately benefit our young people across the continent. This series, and today's we'll be examining silent championing education for peace and prevention of violence. Dialogue is firmly within the elements of the AU's continental framework on youth, peace and security. And what we'd like to see coming out of this session, as well as the rest of the dialogue as a whole, is young people beginning to define the roles that they want assigned to them. Young people taking charge of what they believe are the capacity gaps that exist within their cohort. Young people providing solutions to filling in those gaps. And I think this is a first step, and I'm really grateful that UNESCO ICBA brought this discussion forward. It's a very good opportunity, and I call on all the young people not just to use this dialogue, but also to engage with their networks over this period of time. The third of the series will be in January, where we'll be expecting feedback. So this is enough time for our young people to consult widely and, and those who are not able to be represented, directly in these dialogues, to have their voices and perspectives integrated into the product. I wouldn't want to take too much time, but I'd like to also quickly thank the three panelists who have given up some of their time to be with us. And I think it's a show of not just character, but also sacrifice, which enables those of us in the policy space to be encouraged to continue working to ensure that the YPS agenda is pushed forward. I wish we all can have fruitful deliberations. I'll be in and out due to other commitments, but I am confident that, as usual, our young Africans will rise up to the occasion and make us proud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rooks. And I will invite Suchit to introduce us on the agenda of the dialogue. Suchit, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jerusalem. So today we are joining for the second dialogue. In the first dialogue we had in November, we talked about the context in terms of what are dynamics related to peace, violence, and violence extremism in the region. Today we are focusing a bit more onto the actions led by young people in terms of education for peace. So we want to highlight the role of young people as positive agents of change and how they are contributing to championing peace education in higher education and non-formal education spaces and in schools. We want to hear from you about what type of strategies have you used, what sort of initiatives you've created, what are some of the challenges you faced in this, and what are opportunities you see in how young people can contribute more towards education for peace. So with this in mind, we have invited today three young people. They'll be introduced later, but they will share with us concrete examples of how young people are leading education for peace initiatives. Followed by that, we will have opportunity for also everybody else to contribute their experiences, their good case practices in terms of what are initiatives being led in your context for education for peace and what are challenges and opportunities you're facing. We'll come back, have the opportunity to share in plenary, and then we'll discuss about the next steps in this process. As you remember, we are going through these dialogues as part of a series to develop a youth guide, a guide for young people and youth organizations to lead education for peace initiatives. So these dialogues are serving as a dialogue among us, but also as a consultation towards developing that guide as well. And with that, I'll hand over to Hannah so that we can introduce the panelists. Sorry, actually, my apologies. I think we have thought to have a small icebreaker first. So I'm going to invite Emma, first of all, to introduce two young people who are going to lead us in a short icebreaker. Emma, can I hand over to you?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this session. As part of recognizing youth effort when it comes to creative arts, we wish to give this opportunity to youth engage in the creative arts to showcase their skills. And in this regard, we have Prosperity Melinda Mpofu and Upendo Jackson. I'll start off with Upendo Jackson. Upendo Jackson is from Tanzania, and she is an author, a poet, with various publications in the gender, peace, and security sphere. And she's currently working on a poetry book. And she has also exhibited her work, her poetry work at the Nordic Embassy of Tanzania. And she's currently a program officer for Women and Peace at the Global Peace Foundation in Tanzania. So I wish to welcome Upendo Jackson to the stage. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, everybody. My poem is called Help. And description about this poem is an author seek help and acknowledgement and call for inclusion, collaboration over competition. As youth, our everyday struggle pave way to both internal and external conflict, and we tend to be in conflict with ourselves as well as we feel ignored by governments and people around us. So I argue that peace education is essential for conflict prevention. So the title of the poem is Help, and the poet is Upendo Chitenka. Troubled, saying loud, help. Looking at young, old, breaking down. Stigma, they say. If you don't know, you can't say, I need help. I share, I show, I fall. I become captain, I drown. Help. I don't know which battle to pick or what to fight. I remain silent. Help to rewrite narrative, not to exclude young. Collaboration over competition. From partners to investors, champions, friends, foes, side by side. Do together, come together collectively. Thank you. So Emma, thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Pendo. I wish now to welcome Prosperity Melinda Mpofu from South Africa. You may take the stage. Prosperity, I'm not sure if she's online. Okay, if she's not online, we can just go ahead because I can't see her online.
Okay, if she joins, maybe we can hear her at the end. So thank you, Emma. Can I hand over then to Hannah?
Okay, thank you so much for that poem. That was a good start for our dialogue. So moving on to the next session, we have 3 young panelists who will be speaking. The first speaker will be Ms. Emma Nyanga. She is the African Youth Ambassador for Peace for Eastern Africa. She's with keen interest in the promotion of gender equality, peace and security. She contributes to the suspension of justice, crime prevention, and rehabilitation as a probation officer under the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government in Kenya. Emma also holds a master's in gender and development from Kenyatta University and has a BA in sociology and anthropology from Catholic University of Eastern Africa in Kenya. Our second panelist is Mr. Lukman Akintola. He is from Nigeria and presently residing in Beijing, Kenya, doing his master's in Peking University. He is the founder of Conflict Free Nation, a nonprofit that promotes sustainable security in the continent. He is a development practitioner and keen researcher for Africa's peace and security, international migration, and politics. He has published journal articles in both local and international platforms, and he currently hosts Africa Security Talk podcast that analyzes African security challenges. And our third panelist is Mr. Christian Achaleke. He's from Cameroon. He is the National Coordinator of Local Youth Corner Cameroon. He has 14 years experience working on peace building and preventing violent extremism, and has executed over 500 projects as a consultant. He has a master's in conflict security and development from the University of Birmingham. Christian has been featured in the list of 100 most influential young Africans in 2020, 2017, and 2016. In 2016, he was named the most influential young Cameroonian. He was also named the winner of the Luxembourg Peace Prize in 2018, and he was awarded Commonwealth Young Person of the Year in 2016 and was received by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. So Emma, our first panelist, please go ahead with your interventions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. If it's okay with you, the second artist, Prosperity, has just confirmed she's online. If it is okay, can she go ahead before we commence?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay, so Prosperity is a poet from Zimbabwe, but currently residing in South Africa, where she has been engaged in writing poetry, as well as reciting them in various schools and events. So kindly, Prosperity, kindly take the floor. Prosperity. Okay, she's not online again. So we can just go ahead then, Hannah. Hannah, back to you.
Okay, Emma, you are the first panelist. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Hannah. First of all, I wish to express my gratitude to UNESCO, ICBA, and of course, Arigato International and the AU's Youth for Peace program of team for convening this important session. And I also wish to appreciate the youth participants present, and I urge you to utilize this platform effectively in echoing your voices. Of course, with the current state of conflict in our continent, of course, at regional level, at member state level, when it comes to conflict and instability, and also looking at the dire impacts of this on the population as well as the youth, it is very important that we invest in peace education, which is key when it comes to conflict prevention and, of course, the attainment of a state of positive peace, because the current state that we are in is basically negative peace. And of course, the conceptualization of youth as agents of peace is key, specifically when it comes to effectively addressing both physical, structural, and cultural causes of conflict and violence. And it is important that when you talk about peace education, we really need to ask ourselves, at what point should we start this peace education? And in relation to this, I would really like to refer to a statement by a young South Sudanese woman who states that, she says that she describes the situation as, I am a child of war, born in war, raised in war. I know nothing but war, for this is what has been instilled in me since childhood by my parents and the community. So she says this was describing how, parents deny food to their children. And when the children ask about this food, they are told by the parents, it is this ethnic group that has taken your food. Again, as you can see here, this is basic symbolism that is instilled in childhood. So of course, it's clear that when you talk about peace education, we have to begin at a childhood stage, where a stage which is of course key when it comes to, instilling values and attitudes which are necessary for basically sustaining peace and basically understanding the concept of peace and conflict dynamics. That's, as we engage in peace education, it's very important that we focus on also, an ecological risk model in relation to peace education, where we're able to identify individual, relationship, community, and basically societal issues, which are key when it comes to basically having an entry point when we begin to talk about peace education. And of course, in peace education, recognizing the role of youth is very important, as well as their advantage in relation to them already being at the grassroots, at the forefront of peace building, and also considering their demographic component. And of course, you find that at continental, at regional, and member state level, youth are engaged in peace education, both at individual and group capacity, which is quite commendable. And if you allow me, I really wish to highlight a few efforts of youth at the grassroots. In Kakuma refugee camp, this is a camp that hosts refugees from the Great Lakes region. Refugee Youth Peace Ambassadors, this is a youth-led initiative that not only focuses on providing safe spaces for young refugees, but also engages in peace-building techniques and conflict resolution mechanisms where of course participants are able to explore, various ways of which they can build peace in the community, specifically at the refugee cluster. And of course, the program has also managed to reach out to more than 1,000 young people, specifically refugees in Kakuma refugee camp. Secondly, I wish to also highlight on efforts of one young Kenyan woman. She's called Elizabeth Bathuti. She's a 25-year-old environmentalist and climate activist, where she has helped plant over 30,000 trees, where she strives to change the country with the concept of one tree at a time, of course, through her efforts. She's also behind Adopt a Tree campaign, where she goes to primary schools and secondary schools and teaches on peace education when it comes to specifically environmental conservation through planting trees. Lastly, I wish to bring to light the efforts of Garden for Peace. This is a youth organization in Somalia, where of course it aims to empower and promote and advocate women and youth in peace education. And it does this through the Female for Peace project, which basically focuses on educating women and girls on peace, as well as their role in the process. And despite all these great efforts of the youth, of course, through my current engagement with the youth, they were able to bring to light the various challenges that they are facing. And I'll go through this briefly. Of course, the first challenge is, of course, the current impact of COVID-19 on youth initiatives, of course, when it comes to, of course, the disruption of funding, and as well as also the movement restrictions. So, of course, this has really affected youth initiatives when it comes to peace education. Secondly, culture remains another key impediment, specifically when it comes to the role of young women in peace building. Here you can see the issue of, patriarchal attitudes and stereotypes which come about and hinder the efforts of young women who are engaged in peace building. So of course, again, this becomes a hindrance. This is specifically in the Somalia context. Of course, thirdly, of course, funding is an issue that basically cuts across all youth organizations. And again, not only funding, but also, youth also lack networking opportunities. Youth are at the grassroots. They have the ideas, the projects and all, but they have no platform where they can showcase all the efforts that they are doing on ground. That's another issue that, of course, is limiting the effective implementation of peace education. Capacity building, of course, is another issue. Of course, this cuts across, and again, this, of course, also limits the constructive participation of youth as well as their engagement in peace education. Food insecurity is also another issue. And basically, when you talk about food insecurity, specifically this applies in the refugee cluster, where, of course, you find there's an issue of food ratios. And you wonder how this affects peace education. It affects peace education in that, when you go to talk about peace education, it is not a priority for this vulnerable person, because the priority of this vulnerable person is basically food. So again, this again, of course, impedes the challenge of peace education effectively, specifically in the refugee cluster. Of course, political instability, of course, is another issue. And this, of course, is coupled with the issue of political oppression and suppression of human rights. Human rights here, we talk about freedom of speech and expression, where, of course, you find among some member states, local media is on a leash, as well as, of course, governments of member states tend to, censor thematic areas such as violent extremism, where some governments don't want civil society or youth organizations to talk about this area. So if you don't talk about, violent extremism, then how are we going to counter it? So again, this also becomes a challenge when it comes to peace education. And lastly, of course, there's a challenge of ungoverned spaces, of course, coupled with infrastructure. This in relation to, youth are unable to access some spaces because of the lack of security, the lack of proper infrastructure. So of course, this leaves, the population living in these regions excluded and marginalized from basically gaining this knowledge. And lastly, of course, digital divide is another issue when it comes to peace education, considering that not everybody is able to access online platforms when it comes to peace education. So this is another issue that young youth are facing at the grassroots. And to round up on the recommendations, of course, there's need for education for peace to be mainstreamed in education systems and also in the religion systems. But this is important basically to fill the generation gap, as well as facilitate a transition process from childhood to youth. We talk about the mainstream in education and religion because these are key avenues for socialization when it comes to peace education. So I think that it would be a very key area when it comes to basically trickling down the element of peace education. Also, there's need for member states to commit to constitutional provisions of fundamental rights, freedom of expression, access to information, all these things that member states are really trying to suppress. And here, that is where stakeholders, including media, interfaith, and development partners, really need to push for member states committing to this, as well as support youth when it comes to the agenda. Of course, there's also need for sufficient budgetary provisions when it comes to youth empowerment, when it comes to capacity building, and as we even talk about budgetary provisions, it's very important we talk about also inclusivity in relation to ensuring that we're able to access all youth from all clusters, youth in the informal settlements, in the refugee cluster, in the cluster, in the border cluster. So it's very important that as we talk about that, we facilitate of course, actors, stakeholders really provide, networking platforms. And this is key at both local, national, and regional levels. Of course, to strengthen partnership and coordination among fellow youth, as well as them stakeholders and the youth. And this is very important, and it should be done at cluster level to facilitate inclusivity. And as I conclude, we need to invest in human security, on livelihoods, on the provision of basic needs, on provision of food, health, because again, this of course also impedes the recipients from receiving peace education because of their current state of vulnerability where they lack these basic amenities. Also, it's very important that member states also need to strengthen their security sector, when it comes to peace and education, to facilitate, for example, accessing, when you look at the Karamoja cluster, accessing some areas in the Karamoja cluster is not possible because of the security threats that are there. When you look at, for example, the cattle rustlers, and also basically the infrastructure. So this member states really need to commit to this, and also stakeholders also need to really pressure member states when it comes to this. And lastly, engaging the interfaith community leaders and local leadership when it comes to them identifying and respecting the role of young women when it comes to peace and development agenda. Because if you're talking about peace and security, we cannot go ahead without including women. So addressing the issues of patriarchy that are really limiting the participation of women in the process is an area that we really need to look at. I wish to conclude there. I think I'm past time, but I wish to conclude there. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, for your presentation and the recommendations that you suggested. So moving on to the next panelist, Mr. Lukman Akintola. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. Emma, thank you for your excellent presentation. I think that you have really set a good pace for myself and the next presenter to actually step on. To start with, I would like to thank UNESCO, ICBA, and AU for Peace program, AU Youth for Peace program for actually putting this together. This is a novel initiative, and I think it's very good that youth, we youth are actually having a platform to actually discuss some of these nuanced issues. To start with, I would like to say that Conflict Free Nation, the organization, our organization, basically is a nonprofit that is chiefly concerned about promoting peace and security in the continent. And we use 3 major thematic ways for us to actually promote our projects. We use advocacy, we use capacity building, and we also do research. And this has been our major ways of addressing some of the issues in our community. It is very, very important for us because as youth-led organization, our major role is to see how we can also address some security concerns in our community and how can we play our major roles. But because we know that we don't have everything, all we have is basically our skills, our passion, and more importantly, the little resources that we have with us. So we use things that we know that we can see the impact in promoting sustainable security in our immediate environment and our community. To start with, because this program, I believe that this is basically for us to talk about largely our case studies, our intervention projects, and afterwards I will also try to give some challenges we encounter, how we're able to address them, and I will also go a bit generally on how we can promote peace and security for any other youth organization that is also present here. Basically, for our advocacy project, for our peace building project, rather, in terms of what we do to build people's capacity, because our major goal is that we feel that if we build capacity of youth and people of our generation, we can actually reduce violent conflict. And some of the initiatives we have taken before, and we are still working on, we are doing Tech for Peace. The brain behind this project is basically for us to believe that if we are able to instill some technological skills into youth, and they can use some of this knowledge first to make their living, also to ensure they can use some of these ideas to promote peace in our community. So we are working on Tech for Peace. Tech for Peace, we have trained over 50 youth. Couple of months ago, we did a training in Lagos where we were able to train some youth skills on AI. We trained them on app building. We trained them on digital skills. So with this knowledge, these youth that we have been able to train, now some of them are actually working. They are using some of these skills to support themselves, and they're also using. We also intend that at the end of this project, we are going to bring this youth together, and we'll now come up with some ideas on how can we use technology to address peace more in our environment. So basically, this is a 2-step project, basically to build the skills of this project, of this youth, and also use their knowledge to address some security challenges in our community. Another thing that we have been able to do is Project Empower 500. Project Empower 500 is basically a project that is mainly to help young people and that are still struggling to survive with some soft skills, skills such as paint making, photography, such as guillotine, all these little skills. And we did this mainly in the northeastern part of Nigeria. Anybody that is used to Nigeria very well will know how volatile this area is. We did this in Bauchi, and we have pushed this in some other parts of the country. And we believe that with this, by doing this, we will be able to, we can assist in, because we know we can't do everything, but our little numbers can actually assist in making youth to be more employable and also do things for themselves. So this is another initiative, and right now we have trained 500 youth. So we hope to do more as much as we have. We are able to at least get more resources, and also to as much as we can also get when the pandemic and everything is free for us to move across the country. So we this is another initiative that we have been doing. That is on the area of capacity building. On the area of advocacy, we feel that it is very important, and this is our own angle of defining education for peace. Because as much as we would love to actually do more and educate people as regards peace, we feel that our own education, our informal education of educating them on what can they use to make a good living is very important to us. So we define our education for peace as more of instilling those values, instilling those necessary skills that they can use to be non-violent. And that's what we have been doing. And in the area of advocacy, we have been using, for instance, we launched a podcast earlier this year called African Security Talk. Right now, this podcast have about 10,000 listeners across the continent. So what we are doing with this podcast is basically to actually bring in experts that are well grounded on security issues, issues of piracy, issues of food security, food insecurity, issue of climate security. So a wide range of issues, gender-based violence. So we are actually using this podcast to discuss some of these issues, and we are happy that we are having a lot of listeners across the continent. And another thing we have also been doing as regards the issue of advocacy is about organizing virtual discussion forums. And we have been organizing, the last one we organized was on gender-based violence. We had members of UNESCO, we have members of UNFPA Ghana to be part of the project, and they came in. We have robust discussion as regards gender-based violence and how we can address some of them. We're also talking about mental health issues. We're also talking about civil-military relations. So these are some of the issues we are addressing using our series of virtual discussion forum. And this is about our organization, but there are also some sister organizations also doing a whole lot to promote education for peace and to also promote sustainable security in the continent. For instance, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, which is a development organization in Nigeria. They are also they are also doing a project on security sector governance, and there is also Interfaith Media Center that is also training. That is also organizing monthly programs with religious leaders, trying to educate them what are the right set of language you are supposed to use to preach. How do you do this? Because like Emma rightly said, we need to also consider that there are a lot of issues, and some of issues such as cultural differences, issues such as tradition, issues such as religion. So these are fundamental issues that are actually affecting some of the things we do in the continent. So for us, we have been partnering. We have also been partnering with some of the sister organizations to do some of these projects. So what are the challenges we are facing? We are facing, like any other organization, we are facing issues of funding. And what have we been doing to address some of this funding? I think partnering as one of the major things we have been doing. We partner with sister organizations. And another thing which some other organizations have been doing is to adopt an hybrid approach. So hybrid approach in the sense that they have some little cent of funding program that they do that brings them money, and they use some of the proceeds from their projects to now promote some of their peace education. So they also do this, and some also apply for grants, which some of them have been doing. So these are some of the ways they have been using to address the issue of funding. As regards the issue of skills deficiency, which is also a major challenge within youth organizations. So for us, how have we been addressing our skill deficiency? I think we have been doing this by actually ensuring that we leverage on our team internal skills. That is, we have a photographer within the team, we have a writer within the team, we have a video editor within the team. So we try to leverage on our teams, on our team member skills. And this has really helped us in addressing some of the challenges. However, this is within the team challenges. But what are the challenges we face on field? First, language barrier, because not all of us speak Hausa very well. Not all of us speak Igbo very well. So we have been facing issues of issues of language. We have been there are also issues of not able to reach out to the better authorities, that is, let's say, to the appropriate authorities rather, because some of these authorities, to read them might they are always somewhat difficult. So how do we do this? We try to at least leverage on some of our contact and some of our network to do this. So these are the way we have been able to address some of these challenges. On the overall, I think it is very important that if we want to build a sustainable security in the continent, we need to be talking about justice. I don't think it is going to be easy for us to talk about security without justice. And justice here could mean addressing human rights issues, promoting the inclusion of youth ourselves and a lot of marginalized groups by people with disability, talking about the women folks that have been highly demarginalized in a lot of issues. And basically, we need to also understand the issue of civil-military relations. This is something that needs to be addressed. The civilians, they are always afraid of the military, and the military also see them as enemy. So I think that this needs to be addressed in the continent. And also, we need to also, like Emma rightly said, human security issues is very, very important. With some of our engagement with some of our with people, we notice that while you try to talk to them, some lack education. So education needs to be really addressed in terms of formal education. And this even may help them internalize better when we take our peace education to them. You also need to talk about food. If they do not feed very well, it is very difficult for them to even listen in the first instance. And so you also need to talk about good health. And you also need to talk about economic prosperity. So these are major issues that need to be addressed if we really want to promote this sustainable security in the continent. And lastly, to round up, I would like to say that partnership is very, very important. As youth organizations, irrespective of how much any challenge we are facing, in order to do our work, I think it is very important to seek out partnership, to find the right set of network. And thanks, a huge thank you to AU for Peace Program and UNESCO ICBA for making this possible. So I feel that this is a platform for us to voice our challenges and our opportunities, and also to discuss what we have been doing. So every other youth organization that are here, I would suggest and recommend that we try as much as possible to partner and work with other teaming members. I think this is the major way for us to work together and achieve our goal of silencing the gun in our continent. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I would be available to take any questions or any other thing afterwards. Thank you, Hannah. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lukman, for your presentation. Let's move on to our third panelist, Christian Achaleke. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Hannah. The slides will be, am I the one to put on the slides, or, from your team?
I'll share the slides.
I beg your pardon?
I will share the slides you sent.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very, very much. And it's really a pleasure to join this conversation. I want to thank the partners for bringing us together. And I think that young people champion education for peace and preventing violence, to silence the gun, it's something which it's already happening, and policies have spoken about the role of young people, but I decided to share some practice. And I would like to share, key steps on how we are doing this for the next slide. So our organization, Local Read Corner, the first thing about it is youth-led. So it means that leadership is between 15 to 35. By the time you are above 35, you move on to the next level, which is advisory board, and you no longer manage. And how do we, educate people? Because it's very important to educate to prevent. And one of the things that we really focus on is creating safe spaces for education, learning, and dialogue. And this, I'm going to talk about it in the next slide on how it looks like. We focus around sensitization, building capacity, and skills of young people and other stakeholders. Other stakeholders are very important because sometimes we feel that government knows a lot. But my experience of working within government, I realized that, for example, acronyms like CVE I sat in a session, and a statesman did not know what CV meant. He thought it meant civic education. It means that we stand a big risk if we don't educate the stakeholders, even from government. Educating through advocacy with stakeholders, very important. Young people advocating and using evidence to do this advocacy. We focus around imbibing peace through development of vocational skills and life skills. We also work around development and implementation of policies, as well as engaging in youth-led evidence-based research and publication findings. Very important. You know, young people telling the story in their own way helps to educate their peers and other stakeholders, and create a network. Now, I want to take you through an initiative which works around creating safe space for education, learning, and dialogue. Please, next. So we have this maiden idea, which is called the SALAAM Initiative. It's among our several initiatives around creating safe spaces for education and learning. Now, in the far north region of Cameroon, just like northern region of northeast of Nigeria, children and young people have been displaced. Many of them have been told that education is not the right way because Boko Haram says education is forbidden. And we realize that many of them have no access to school, do not have a space for them to even learn around civic education, to learn around being patriotic and all of that. So we decided to create this initiative, which focuses on providing free formal and non-formal education, creating this space for them to learn. And in this process, we are providing, free schooling and learning for elementary and secondary school. And the idea is re-educating children who've been out of school. We provide psychosocial support, mental health and well-being, and we engage them in recreational activities. We teach them how to cook, work on their basic shelter and all of that. We focus around building socioeconomic empowerment and their personality development for these children. A child who is born out of war or who have lived war has lost a lot of his childhood, doesn't know what it means to put on the pants and run under the rain like what we have in the continent. So we try to bring this back to them, and we conclude this process by supporting their reintegration back into school. And I mean, this is one of the kind of initiative which focuses around education per se, but looking at different aspects to ensure that education is complemented by what makes it work at the end of the day. And the next slide is going to tell you about the impact which we've had so far. Please, next slide. Now, so far we have 150 children enrolled into this program, and it started so crazily because starting a school is very difficult in our context. People think that it takes a lot of money, but I realized that the way in which we started, I traveled to the US for a meeting and I had per diem. I used this per diem. I went to a dollar shop and I purchased, things for dollar, books and others, and I packed in my suitcases and I traveled back to the country, and we took it up north, and that's how we started. Like a joke, today we have government officials and communities who are really looking up to this program because it's having real change. Today we have 40% of these children who are attempting to read and write. I mean, these are children who had lost hope of going to school. Now we have 60% of them who have rejected violence because we do M&E, we speak to them. Our team around psychosocial support does this. And interestingly, these are all done by young people. It's all pro bono because there's no funding for such a project. Stakeholders think sometimes we need to focus on humanitarian only and give bags of rights and clothes and all of that. We feel that this is really building peace from a different perspective. We have 20 of these children who recently got integrated into formal school. 20 of them, after we did their monitoring and evaluation, we were sure they were ready. We had scholarship for them and they went into formal school. We got their uniform, school bags and everything, and we still support them throughout the process. I think there was an error on that figure there. Then we have 80% of community member support. Initially, a lot of people, even government officials, thought it was not possible to get it done. Traditional ruler thought it was not possible. Today, it is working and they are very much more interested. And they just recently offered us a parcel of land if we want to construct. Unfortunately, we don't have the resources, but I think it's very important. Even the first Tash hut, which was built by the community members themselves. And we have children who have denounced violence and terrorism. This is, the increase that we've seen. 100% of them are saying, no, we don't want to revenge, because a lot of them were filled with revenge. I mean, this is just one of those spaces. In the far north still, we have an initiative called the STAR Project, where we are bringing security forces, community, women together to converse in a safe space and dialogue to be able to create roadmaps towards building peace collaboratively. Next slide. Now, building capacity is very important, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm very glad that UNESCO is part of this initiative. UNESCO has greatly supported us around building capacity of different stakeholders, of young people. UNESCO regional office in Cameroon has greatly invested, and it has really bear fruit because we believe that teaching and giving people information is very important. Our experience working with or training prison administrators after working in the prison system for a very long time was very strategic because we realized that sometimes even budgets and resources to be spent around building peace is not seen to be very valued because the stakeholders who make decisions are not aware of it. So we have been working around training, and this is an example of how we have been training prison administrators. We have equally worked with training police officers around human rights because we realize that their curriculum sometimes are out of date. Their curriculum sometimes does not adapt to the change in the security nexus that we have within communities. And that's more of what we've been doing. We've been working with children as well, teaching them and training them, going to schools, talking about intergenerational, intercultural dialogue, especially in the Far North region, because of the fact that, violent extremist group build on misconception, misinformation, and purported religious preaching to be able to radicalize children. So we go to schools and educate them, and sometimes bring imam and other senior persons to speak to them to rebuild their confidence. Next slide. Another thing is education through advocacy. I mean, I didn't want to put a photo on this because it's one of a key thing that we've been doing, making access to be able to showcase what young people are doing. And we've used research to be able to communicate this. We have used development of policy documents to be able to, resonate this. For example, we have a national action plan around youth perspective around CVE, which we present our youth ideas. But what we do is that we meet with different stakeholders. For example, we'll seek for audience to meet with head of UNESCO, director of UNESCO, to say, okay, this is what we are thinking. We meet UN agencies, we meet government and religious and traditional authorities to tell them this is what we are thinking and this is what can work, and we show them evidence. And one thing about this is the importance of evidence-based advocacy, not just speaking from the air or from your head, but telling them this is what young people are doing, this is why you have to support, this is what is important for peace, because this is what we are seeing in the community. It's very important because evidence has really changed and reshaped. I just give you an example. Because of our advocacy, for the first time nationally, the National Youth Day was launched in prison because we have been working extensively in prison, and we kept showing the state the importance of reshaping peace and security within prison. And the National Youth Day in 2018 was actually launched in prison. Next slide. Another thing is around imbibing peace. It's very important to build peace, especially with young people who have had a history of violence. And we designed an initiative which is called Prisonpreneurship, which for the past 4 years, we have been designing vocational skills training programs within prison, and at the same time using it to be able to imbibe in them a culture of peace. And today we've worked with over 5,000 inmates in 8 prisons across the country, and we have 20 of them who upon release have not gone back to violence. I mean, this is a key evidence of how teaching them how to build peace alternatively is very important. And I just want to share with you one example. When we initiated a poultry farm in prison, a lot of people did not see the importance, but we realized that many young people who take lives is because they have never given life to something. They don't have a child, or they underlook the importance of something having life. When we initiated the poultry farm, we handed them 1-day-old chicks. Believe me, we came back 3 months later and these chicks were all there. And they were the ones who told us that, Christian, you gave us 30 chicks. This is to tell you that we love them. We have understood what it means to give life to something, and this is teaching them from a different perspective. And that's why, vocational skills was very important, looking at it from a peace and security angle, not just teaching them skills. And we use the youth peer-to-peer approach, using young people to train them. And these are some pictures of how they have been working for the past 4 years. And these programs are still there running. Next slide. Now, this is around sports and inter-prison essay competition. So we have Sports for Peace tournament where we bring communities together and they play football and maybe handball. And then we have this inter-prison essay competition where we use storytelling within prison to help inmates to be able to tell their story and help them heal. It's very important because we have an example of a guy called Rodrigue who was first in one of the essay competition in his prison, and this helped his transformation. Upon his release, he currently works with us now as one of the judges of this essay competition. This is a young person who was able to tell his story in a different way, in writing something which he had committed that he had never told anyone. But he felt that he had purged a pestilence air by telling the story through the essay competition. Next slide. And now around research, evidence-based research is very important. Many times we young people, we talk a lot, we want to do activism a lot, but we don't want to focus around researching. I mean, we started this initiative, you know, still with little capacity, but we had to form groups. And if you can see on some of these cover pages, we also bring in senior professors at the same time to collaborate with young people to have some kind of intergenerational mentorship in research. And today we have several of such publications, and these are just two which are focused around the nexus between peace and hate speech, as well as, you know, youth peace and security and the peace process. These are just examples of what we've been able to do, and it's really, really shaping conversations within different spaces where people reach out to these resources to be able to learn, to be able to get evidence, to be able to get key practices which has been working. Because usually we don't get support for youth actions because we don't know what is working. So we tell the stories, we always give evidence and examples within our work. Thank you. Next slide. And now creating networks, you know, as I mentioned earlier, building networks is very important around learning because it focuses around sharing positive practices. It focuses around showcasing what young people do. For a period of time, our first effort was creating the National Youth Coalition on Youth Peace and Security. We recently worked with UNESCO and other stakeholders in Cameroon to set up the first National Youth Mediators Network. This is important because it was built out of conversation from UN Security Council Resolution 2419, which really stressed on young people leading peace processes. But unfortunately, stakeholders talked about this and reaction did not take place. So as young people, we had to take a step further and invited stakeholders to know it could work. And today, this network has 17 young people out of 600 young people went through this process. This is to tell you how rigorous networks also need to look like, because it's meant for sharing of positive practices. And UNESCO has been a key supporter of this program as well. And also we have a national network around rehabilitation and reintegration, which was created even before a national DDL commission was set up in the country. This means that young people had started reflecting and learning around demobilization, rehabilitation, and reintegration before even state was taking action, and making them ready to be able to support this process effectively. Because our fear is that we don't go back to the space where they always say young people are troublemakers, they are not taking action. Now we are being proactive. We are even there to teach members of government and even teach other stakeholders on what works for us. Next slide. Now, on my key lessons which you've learned, I just want to round up with this, is to say that the first thing which is very important in young people educating to silence the gun is that we need to look at education from different spaces, not only formal. We should look at how do we use sports effectively? How do we use music? How do we use different stakeholders who are not traditional peace builders to support the educational process? Continuously, I was very elated to see that we had poets who were talking from their own angle, tapping on their talent. Many young people are very talented, and sometimes we keep them by the side and do not look deep at what they can offer. Another key lesson I've learned is that we young people do not have to wait for us to be given a space on the table. We can create our own spaces, and trust me, stakeholders are going to follow. We've seen from my experience in Cameroon, and many other civil societies are doing that. And you would see UN and other agencies wanting to work with you because you did not just wait. Create your own spaces. Sometimes it's not just about money. It's not just about the passion or vision. It's about collaboration with different young people who have skills and who are ready to work. And finally, my appeal to our peers is that let us be very proactive, because peace and security is a major challenge in our context. If you've never lost a family from a gunshot or a friend, you would not feel how deep this is. You don't have to wait for that to happen. Giving your best, let's protect our countries, let's build peace, and ensure that together we can be able to change things. Thank you very, very much for your attention, and I'm very open to questions subsequently. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Emma, Lukman, and Christian, for your wonderful presentations. Let me hand over to Suchit for the next session.
Thank you, Hannah. And once again, thank you very much, Emma, Lukman, and Achaleke for your sharing and the powerful evidence you show of young people contributing meaningfully to education for peace. So what we want to do now is to open up the flow so that more people can share the good case practices, how they are contributing for education for peace through their own organizations in their own context. What we've done, something small difference, is that maybe instead of going to many groups, we are only going to break out into 2 groups now. So let me quickly share the task that we have, and then I'll invite you to join one of the 2 groups. So what we are asking from you is also from the larger group, what are other good practices that you can also speak to, that you can share, how young people are contributing to education for peace in your context? And then as well, at the same time, what are challenges, what are opportunities you're facing in this work in the realm of formal or non-formal educational activities that you are carrying out as well? I will invite you to join the 2 breakout rooms. Please click on the button and join. We have about 20 minutes in each group, and then we'll come back to share. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had meaningful discussions in the 2 different groups. Can we hear from you? Maybe we can start with one of the groups sharing what were some of the discussions, what were some of the interesting good case practices that were highlighted, any opportunities and challenges that you identified in your group.
Okay, can I?
Yes, Cyprian, go ahead. Which group are you?
Group 2.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Cyprian.
Some of the good practices we were able to identify is that in some schools, we have camping, we have posters with messages to promote peace. We also offer services to communities around, targeting students both in primary and secondary schools, talking with them on how to be good citizens, and also participating in activities to help them promote peace, and also to help them change their behavior. Also, another good practices that we're able to find out is that students from different communities around conducting activities together to build stronger relationships with the members of their communities and societies. And also we have youth clubs available in most campuses and schools to promote peace as a collective responsibility for everyone. And also creation of resource centers, which provides a platform where free courses are offered to youths. We also have the GNRC, which establishes peace clubs in schools. That was in Tanzania, teaching children about conflict and teaching children about conflict, as well as in regional peace program, so that it was aimed at ending child poverty and the GNRC program. And also, they were able to taking youth into different cohorts to participate in the program. Those are some of the good practices we're able to identify and find out in our context. And some of the challenges are lack of access to some of these activities due to lack of financial support. And some of the remedy to that is finding or asking for necessary support from the available stakeholders, especially even if it's in campus, needing support from the school management and even other stakeholders. Another challenge was the youth themselves. Some of them are not interested in becoming or taking part in the peace program. And also another challenge that we're able to find is that some organizations don't give the required permission for some of these events to take place there, and that's a challenge. That is from our presentation from our group. Thank you.
Thank you, and very meaningful sharings. There are some very good case practices identified, and some good reflections about the opportunities and challenges. I can resonate very much with the challenge of youth-led organization gaining access to schools, and in many places that's very controlled and not easy to gain that access to work with young people at a school setting if you are a youth-led organization that's outside the school setup. So I can understand that as well. Shall we hear from the other group as well? Group one, who's going to present?
Okay, in our group, we identified the role of education institutions when it comes to peace education, where, of course, in education institutions, there are various peace clubs engaged in providing spaces for the students when it comes to dialogue, and also inter-university networks where they focus on basically awareness creation and basically on the role of youth when it comes to conflict prevention. We also looked at advocacy, which is basically done on online, specifically, or not only on peace, but also for the respect for human rights, specifically for the host governments. The challenges that we had identified were, of course, digital divide. There's also the challenge of lack of safe spaces for youth to express their voices where they are suppressed. Of course, in this case, police brutality comes in, and also lack of safe spaces, basically in relation to political identity, where or you find that youth from opposing parties are seen as enemies by the ruling party. So that's another issue where opposing parties lack safe spaces. Also, there's the challenge of knowledge gap on distinction between positive peace and negative peace, of course, in the community. And also the challenge of, the role of the government in ensuring both peace and stability. And basically for the youth trying to identify strategies for engaging stakeholders, the strategies for engaging the government in addressing this. So there were the recommendations that we pointed out. Some of the recommendations were to counter digital divide, we should look at investing in digital skills hub at cluster level, basically, we should be able to provide the youth with access to the internet, as well as also peace education, and also build their skills when it comes to the digital sphere. There's also the recommendation of empowerment platforms where youth can come in through the creative arts, which will not only empower the youth, but also facilitate in pushing for peace education. Also, youth partnership is very important. Youth partnership and networking is very important in pushing for our agenda at the grassroots level. So partnership is very key. Of course, it will also help in resource mobilization, also furthering our agenda at a greater scope as youth. Thank you. If I've forgotten something, somebody can please add. Thank you.
Any addition from anybody else from group one? Okay, thank you very much, Emma, for sharing on behalf of Group One. And again, you also highlighted the importance of this networking spaces for young people in different institutions. In your case, you highlighted universities, to have the opportunities to connect with other young people carrying out initiatives and having that opportunity both at an institutional networking level, but also maybe internationally, as you talked about networks as well. And I heard that from the other group as well. One of the good case practices was when peace ambassadors were empowered at a school level, but then they were brought into regional programs where they could meet other young people and peace ambassadors from the region as well. So I hear those as powerful ways that we can continue to empower young people and build the capacity. I also hear quite a lot of reflections from you in looking at education, not just in its formal sense, but also through new media, through sports, through digital media, through online resources, and sports and other creative expressions, arts. So I think you've spoken quite a lot highlighting the importance of this broader approach to engaging and looking at peace, education for peace through these different channels beyond maybe the school and the university, and then the non-formal activities. And I want to maybe ask a question from open to everyone to reflect and share as well. We heard quite a lot around the school and maybe what can be done more to empower young people at universities to carry out peace education programs, because in most countries, in most contexts, not everybody has that access to higher education. And then when you are in university, you have the opportunity to study about society and the issues of conflict. So then you can play a critical role in going to the community and educating the community and educating younger generations about issues of peace. So how do you think we can strengthen that actions from, especially in higher education, when young people in higher education go out to the community, go out to schools and engage more? What can we do more in that regard? Any reflections, any thoughts, or in general about anything else as well?
Maybe I can contribute by saying creating sustainable networks. A classic example is we have, I think, 25 participants this Zoom meeting. So post this Zoom meeting, will we continue dialoguing and networking and just asking the fellow participant, where are you? What are you doing in your space? How can I assist? What skills do I have that I can contribute? etc, etc. So I think one of the best ways is creating sustainable networks, so that even out of school, they're able to still have that connection. They're still able to exchange ideas, and I think that will contribute a lot.
Thank you, Collins. Any other reflections? Yes, Cyprian, please go ahead.
So I just wanted to, as Collins has been speaking, that is very true. I just wanted to second this point by looking at it this way. Another challenge that I think we missed is that, especially in most campuses here, and the period of learners, most of them doesn't go beyond 4 years. So when they're on campus, it's easier for them to engage in these activities. But once they leave campus, and then when the networks break, and then there is no support from even other friends, classmates or schoolmates and other bodies, you find out that it becomes so hard for one to continue with these initiatives. So I just want to say, as well as creating that sustainability, the smooth transition even from one phase to another, where we have those programs the programs which are needed were together, so that when one person is graduating from high school into the job market, they can also be able to continue doing the things that they were doing at campus. A lot of people actually lapse along the way because they either lack motivation or even the reason or to continue doing those things is no longer there. Some people actually go into families, and then there are other more responsibilities to think about. But if we have proper networks and proper programs in place that enables us to transition well from one stage to another, I think.
Thank you, Cyprian. Francis. Francis? I can't hear you.
I'm saying I'm Francis from Uganda. I joined the conversation I've just mentioned. It is very important to establish a network of university graduates that has a follow-up. So establishing a program that probably has an alumni network that will connect even after university and has opportunities for them to engage on that bring them back together and also opens them to opportunities that would help enhance their career is a way of keeping the network tight. So if there is a program that opens these graduates to opportunities that enhance their career in regard to discussion of keeping peace and pushing the agenda, it really brings them back together always.
Thank you, Francis. Anybody here who is in a maybe education department or is looking to be a teacher in future? It will be really interesting to hear how you see issues of peace education for peace.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, Cyprian.
Yeah, I am training to be a teacher. I'm training to be a mathematics and computer studies teacher. Just to answer your question, teachers interact a lot more with students, actually a lot longer, even sometimes more than their parents or their guardians. So one thing we can do as teachers is to help our learners in school by teaching them and promoting peace there at school, because we get to influence so many people and so many students throughout a year. It's a very good and great opportunity for me as an educator, because that's a great opportunity for me now to use that chance to promote and teach them about peace and how to promote peace, how to avoid conflict, and just things into that line. So as educators, doing that, incorporating that in our programs at school, that will really help. Thank you.
Cyprian, I'm going to pick your brain a bit more because you are one of the people who are here is going to be a future teacher, you said. And then interestingly, you said mathematics and computer science. How do you see maybe issues of peace being addressed through that subject? Do you see that possibility? Has university prepared you for that, to see how issues of peace can be integrated into these two subjects, and any pedagogy related to that?
Okay, thank you for that. Computer studies basically is, I would say, technology, ICT, integration of ICT. So right now, I would say that the campus is on that course of integrating ICT into the matters of peace, using technology to promote peace through their platforms like Facebook, Twitter, even WhatsApp sometimes. So I feel like in the sector of education, especially in these two subjects, use of technology to promote peace by creating those flyers, creating those posters, creating short videos and short messages. The school does that, even though they don't do a lot of that, I will say, but I will say slowly by slowly, we can use computer studies to promote peace that way by creating those animations, creating videos, creating flyers, messages, sending those messages, mass messages to people. We can use IT in that way. Now in mathematics, it sometimes kind of it becomes difficult, especially when not so many people like the idea of it. But I will say also, we have not done a lot in maths, but maybe in the future we can think of some of the ways we can do in that area related in promotion of peace. Maybe we can think about using some symbols in math to create maybe objects or something in that nature that maybe we can place around the campus, and also or maybe in the neighboring schools in our activities, mathematical objects mostly. I think that will help us as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyprian. And with our work with teachers, we often discuss this. Can we not isolate just and leave it at the calculations only in our mathematics teaching, but go the extra step and connect it to the applied aspect in education? I think this is some aspect of peace education that we definitely need to improve. And I think from the other side, when you talked about ICT, I think that's where young people are leading. Youth organizations are doing much more online. They are much more advanced than the formal education sector in using ICT and technology for peace. So I think that the formal education sector has quite a lot to learn from you in that regard, from the different initiatives led by young people. Any other reflections? We are coming towards the end of the day today, dialogue today. Any reflections? I hear a voice. Mariam, would you like to share? Yes.
Yes. Yes. So yes, I'm Mariam, literary person from Uganda. I'm a scholar of gender and applied women health, and as we speak, I'm organizing a campaign against gender-based violence, in particular sexual harassment. And I believe that peace is a tool that we can use in so many of these social issues like gender inequality, domestic violence, be it political instability. There is an element of, if people could have cordial relationships, cordial interactions, and wish everyone well, all these issues would sort of be solved. So if you can have multi-sector collaboration with different entities that are working in social justice, it's really unsaid, but there's a key element of peace surrounding all these issues. And even during the campaign I'm organizing, we are having discussions on how peace education can be used as a tool to end gender-based violence. And this can equally be as a tool in things to do with climate action, things to do with political instability, police brutality, all these different issues. So
sector, that's also a reflection from what I heard from Emma. I think we are coming to the end. Any last comment before we wrap up? No. Thank you very much for these important reflections. As we said, we continue to hear from you, and we look forward to continuing to engage. Beyond this dialogue, we will have a third dialogue. So I'm going to hand over to Jerusalem and Dr. Rooks for the last part of the dialogue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Suchit. Oh, Jerusalem, please go on.
Please go ahead, Rooks. No problem.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Suchit. I think this has been another exciting couple of hours. I was in one of the groups, but silent, because I always love to hear what young people are doing and how they connect the dots to what is and should be going on in the policy space. I'm really proud of each and every one of us that has been part of this. A lot of you are known to me, and I always say it, and I will restate that I am extremely humbled at the way that you put yourself out for public good. And this is done most times, without adequate backing from institutions. So I would like to say a big thank you. I'd like to say thank you also, of course, to colleagues at UNESCO ICBA. As has been said, this is the second of 3 webinars. Jerusalem will be speaking on the third one. And I would just like to say, for those who are present today, please avail yourselves for the third one, because I think your voices are really important to the development of these products, which would leave a sustainable mark in the training of younger ones to at least be like you and hopefully surpass the achievements you've made in your time. I would also like to say thank you to my colleagues at the Youth for Peace Africa program, who have also, worked tirelessly to push the YPS agenda forward. I think the progress we have made in the past couple of years are worthwhile, they are notable, and of course, with the cooperation of the whole range of stakeholders we can mention. So Jerusalem, over to you, as I just say, thank you to everybody.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rooks, and it was really interesting and encouraging to hear from all of you on the role of youth and what role they are planning at the ground and also in the community, and how educationally interesting session. And this dialogue also reflects how education can be one of the powerful tools to address the issue of peace. And as the panelists and as during the discussion, as it's reflected, education must be strong and inclusive, so that we need also to address the issue of those children in the school and also out of the school children. And I am really happy that the issue of complementing with the capacity building for the education partners, especially for teachers and other sectors, are also mentioned in the discussion, which is, I think, very important sectors for the success of the education sector. And education for peace is more important, I can say, especially in the time of COVID-19, and this pandemic itself is a disaster, and it's also intensifying some of the existing disasters as well as the conflicts in several countries in Africa. So African children lost one golden year from their school, and some might not come back to school. So we are expected to work more. And today I can say that we get very important input, not only on how to design this training material, but also how we need to design our future programs when we think about the involvement of the youth. So the youth are not only the recipient or are not only the beneficiaries, but they use more from the alleviating the problems, and they use more on the playing the role of stakeholders in bringing peace in African continent. So let us keep sharing and learning from this good job. And as Rooks and Suchit mentioned, we will have the third dialogue, which will be on the 28th of January. But before that dialogue, we will share you the training material, the document that we were talking about for your review and for your input. So that dialogue will be used to validate the training material. So afterwards, it will be taken by each of our countries, and we will be also the ambassador and also the resource person to work on the training material and to educate and to aware more young people on the area of peace. So thank you very much. Thank you, YPC, and thank you, Arigato, for your commitment and engagement in these dialogues. And thank you for all of our participants for being very committed and for being very generous. And I hope I will see you again on the next webinar on January 28th, but we will share you the documents on hand before that workshop on the January 21, so that you will get time to read and to reflect back on the material. Thank you very much. And I think we are finishing the dialogue, and maybe Suchit or Hannah, if you have something to say, over to you. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you. Again, just appreciation for all the wonderful work that all of you are doing, and the work that is very important. Thank you for sharing that with us as well, as we try to capture that as lessons for other young people to be inspired and to contribute to education for peace in their own ways as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for participating and sharing your experiences on this dialogue.